In this episode of Simple Robotics, the podcast, I sit down with my guest, Sam Goff, to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion within the animation industry. This episode, we do get pretty candid about our experiences, our perspectives, and in forecasting what we believe could be some of the improvements or where things seem to be going, at least for right now, in the animation industry. And this is another episode being sponsored by Autodesk. With that being said, let's start the episode. You mentioned earlier about being able, through your teaching work and some of the outreach, to bridge the gap between animation and activism. And I've heard you use the term like animation activist. What does that actually mean to you, and like what does it look like?
Yeah, this is something that I discovered I discovered of myself along with my work in the outreach and engagement department, where I realized how important it was for me to be influential in the DEI space. DEI meaning diversity, equity, and inclusion. Um, I early in my career really struggled with a ton of microaggressions, um, but also like some macro aggressions around my Black womanhood, and being perceived as something that I'm not because of the color of my skin. So that really fueled my want to make the industry more diverse, but more importantly, more inclusive, make it a safer and more fulfilling place to be at, because we 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 all know anecdotally that animation is like a white male dominated industry. um but if you come into work in the industry, you actually see that there is quite a bit of diversity here. The issue is that all of the diversity is at the bottom of the pyramid. It's all of like the people who are in like entry level positions, and the higher up you get in power, the more white male dominated it becomes, and like that's clearly an issue. So, uh,
The individual, I almost specified, the individual was also like, oh, well, do you understand like the animation pipeline? And in my head, I'm like about to short circuit because I was like, what's the point of me submitting a resume and like whatever, and then LinkedIn and all that sort of stuff? I went to school similar to you, Sam, for this, where I had to do a thesis, and I went to a very well known art school at that. So once you hear the name of the school, normally it's assumed like this person has this type of education, whatever. And my work experience, and you're still trying to have me prove that I know the animation production pipeline and say like, yes, I understand pre-production and where like simulation and fur and surfacing, I understand that, and then post, yes, yes. So I had to like verbally break it down for her. And then I said her now. um and then the person, maybe I'll bleep that out, was just like, oh, okay. And then there just been so many moments of like some microaggressions, some really odd interviews at the same time. Yes, from people that may or may not look like me, also from people that, have similar intersections. And I'm just like, what is really going on out here from the hiring side? And sometimes the recruiters themselves have been like, okay, but it's the upper management, where I'm just like, y'all are disconnected. Like the recruiter and upper management need to sync. So,
oh yeah, I can definitely speak to that, coming from being a recruiter. Um, because our like talent acquisitions, this whole job is working with people and helping them, bring them into the studio, interviewing, blah 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 blah. So like the skills that we develop, and that we train on are ones with about DEI, and having more conscious uh, efforts away from bias, right? So like we're constantly thinking about that. We're constantly training about it. We're constantly talking about it, and putting that into the work that we're doing when we're sourcing people. Then the hiring manager will come to us and say, "Here's what I want." We go through our list and we find them. Here are my 10 recommendations of who you should go with. But the hiring managers, their job isn't hiring, right? Their job is art or whatever the department that they're head of, and they're looking for an artist, and so they don't have those same skill sets. They
Mm,
don't have that same training of like, here's what to look for, here's what to do and not to do in an interview. Like none of that stuff is provided to a hiring manager. It's just like, go talk to people and find someone for your team.
yeah. Mm,
Whereas a talent acquisitions like career person actually learns and trains and how to do that kind of stuff. And so that's where that disconnect comes from. And it's really frustrating because as a talent acquisitions person, we are the gatekeepers, but we're not the decision maker. The
right.
decision maker is the hiring manager. And sometimes we will get into straight up fights with hiring managers when they just want to lean in on, bad habits, and we're trying to push them to do more. Like, well, can you at least interview people? Can you at least consider these candidates? And they're saying, like, well, no, 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 I can't, this, that, and the other thing. And being like, bruh, please, like, let us do our job. Trust that we know what we're doing
Right.
and talk to these people.